Hello and welcome to Copic in the Craft Room. Michelle Houghton here. I recently had a request after someone viewed our video on filling empty marker bodies about how to do that with making a color darker versus making it lighter. So I've got my empty, and this is a classic. You can notice that by the square body. And the ends are unmarked, uncolored. And so I've weighed that to kind of see where I'm starting it. And I have some numbers already written down. I know that with the caps on, I'm aiming for a 20.3-ish final number on my scale. Without the caps on, I'm aiming for around a 14.2. So I know about how much I need to add. And then I've pulled some colors. I thought I'm going to do a darker blue because that was the specific request. And I'm going to try a few things. First of all, I'm going to try some different blues. The goal is not to make it necessarily a whole lot grayer or desaturated. We have that if we wanted to go into those B90s or B9s, but we wanted to truly just make it darker. So I thought I'm going to add some different colors. That was a B29. I started with a B18. And I've got those numbers written down on that paper underneath just for my own reference to see what those look like. This is with a B39 added to it. So you can kind of see what the starting color is, what it looks like on top of the B18. And that's a good possibility. It's got, it's definitely gotten darker, richer, and it's not necessarily a real gray color to me. It's really gotten deeper. This is a B69. And again, I feel like I've gotten a nice rich color. It appears to be darker than the actual B69 itself. Obviously, I'm doing this all on paper, and so a lot of this is very much experimenting, and I'm not sure how that's going to go. But this is really just playing around, and I feel like it's safer to start that on paper versus just filling a marker. Obviously, once I've put a bunch of ink in there, I don't have a whole lot of leeway. I can change it, but it's always going to be a mix of colors versus what it started out as. So I've kind of decided which colors I'm going to go with. And so I've got, you can kind of see at the top of my screen, I've got all of those re-inkers. I'm pulling one other color over because I wanted to see what the B99 looks like in comparison. I want to make sure that that's not where I'm headed. I've already got that, and so I don't necessarily need to mimic that again, but I want to see if I can get something that has more blue to it, not as much gray, but that is truly darker. It's a good challenge, and that is much harder to do than to lighten and create your own lighter versions of colors. Much harder to darken. You can't just add black because then you're going to go gray. And so adding a deeper blue or richer blue, obviously I'm adding some more gray because these are desaturated colors, but hopefully I'm going to get a good mix. So I am going to start, and I've got my scale going, and I apologize, it is a little hard to see kind of what I've got going, but I'm zeroing it out, and then I know it's starting at a 10.5. My goal is a 14.2. Because both caps are off, which they need to be to fill. And I'm going to leave the nibs in. So I'm going to be filling by dripping into the side against that chisel nib. So what you're going to see me doing is literally kind of pouring or dripping ink into that chisel nib. And obviously this is kind of a slow back and forth process at this point because I'm going to do some dripping, and then I'm going to set it back down on the scale to kind of see where I'm at. And so this is up to 10.7. So I really only got 0.2 in there, not a whole lot. Obviously I need to add quite a bit more. I've talked to some people that have done a lot of custom color designing with their Copic markers, and a lot of people actually will mix these outside of the marker. Once they know the blend that they want, they mix it up in a small jar when they know how many parts to what. That's up to 10.9. So I've gone up about 0.4 so far. Adding a little bit more, but once they have that, you know, one part of this, 2 parts of this, they can consistently mix that in a jar and then add it in. So it's all mixed, ready to go. That's 11.2. And that way they get a consistent color every single time. That's 11.4. and 11.6. And you can imagine I'm kind of doing this on the fly, so I'm not doing a super good job of keeping track. If you want to be super precise, you need to write these numbers down so you know exactly how much you got. 11.8 is where I've ended up with it there. So I would take some copious notes when you decide to move to your next color, and that way you've got some real specifics on exactly what you've got in your marker body. And that has ended up at 11.9. So that is 1.4 that I've added into that. So now I'm adding my second color, which is a B69. I'm adding that to see, I'm just going up from there. So I'm adding quite a bit at this point because I'm trying to get about equal parts of these two colors. So the B18 was first. This is the B69. I'm up to a 12.8, so I've got almost one whole. I think the CC or the grams in there. Adding a little bit more. See where we're at. And I'm up to a 13.7. And 14.1. So I'm putting my piece back on there. And obviously I'm a little bit shy of what I could go up to. I also realized that my scale hadn't zeroed out completely at that point, so I'm going to let that sit for a second. You can kind of see where the scale isn't exactly on. It's 19.9, so it's a little bit shy of what I could take it up to. I've got a little bit of wiggle room. And at this point, I've given it a little bit of time just to try to let it kind of even out. And I'm drawing right beside my B69 and my B18 to see if I've got a new combination. And it looks like I have. It's something that's darker than the B69. It's certainly darker than the B18. And you can see again, I didn't get it zeroed out, so I'm going to start fresh. I turn the scale off and back on so it starts at 0, and I want to see where it really ended up at. And this is actually saying 13.9. And as I go back and watch this, I'm actually taking some notes off to the side so I know exactly how much I've added of each one. I've decided to try to go a touch darker with a B39, and that's all the way up to 14.3. And I've obviously given that a second. It's probably not completely mixed in there, but a second to kind of remix around in there. And it does get a little bit darker, which is exactly what I was hoping would happen with that B39 added in. So it's not exact, but I have about one part of the B1A, or two parts, sorry, B18, 2 parts of the B69, and 1 part of the B39. I went back and did the exact math. and it's not quite that. And so I'm going to redo kind of my label, because I'm going to make a label here for the marker. You're going to see me kind of draw that on a piece of washi tape just so I have reference to that. But I used 1.4 of the B18, 2 of the B69, and 0.4 of the B39. So probably what I will do is I will mix those amounts in a separate container next time when I'm ready to refill it. And then I might not need to use it all. Obviously, if the marker is not totally empty, I can save it for later, or I can mix it in something that's airtight, and that way I have it for when I need to refill the marker. It's not a whole lot of ink, so if I need it, there was a tiny bit of waste, that's okay too. But I have those exact amounts written down, and I will relabel that marker here shortly. But you can see I'm just taking some notes on a piece of washi tape. I'm going to wrap that around the marker so I know exactly what I've got. That is that darker blue, and this is how I got there. I will redo that today so that I don't forget what those numbers actually are, and that way I've got a good record of it and can come back and refill this marker as often as I want to. Hopefully this has helped give you a sense of, you could do some mixing to create whole new colors. And so it does take some playing, and you're going to want to play off to the side on some paper. You can play like in a paint tray and add 5 drops of this and 2 drops of that, and just know that that's going to be your route of measurement. If you didn't have a scale, you could do it that way. But this is going to give me the opportunity to have this new blue in my connection. I know a lot of people have said, why aren't we getting new colors? Well, you can always create your own. The Copic Sketch and the Classic and the wide bodies all come in empties, so you can make your own colors in any of those body styles. The only one that does not is the Chow. So you would need to, that's the one that you cannot buy an empty for. All the others come in empties, and you can create your own color combination. So if you feel like there's a gap somewhere, you are more than welcome to fill those gaps by combining some of the colors that you already own. So one question that one of our viewers also had when we were having this discussion about filling markers was, what if I added complementary colors? You can to get things darker. The problem with transparent ink that Copic is that it's going to read through. And so yes, it will gray it down. Yes, it will darken it up. But what happens is I feel like you lose the blue. So what I did is I pulled a yellow-red, kind of an orange, which would be the complementary color. And unfortunately what happens is it gets pretty muddy. It looks a little more greenish grayish versus a true blue color. Now you could absolutely play around with that more, and some different combinations of different colors, different other than the one specific color that I brought with me and played around with. So play with that, and you can find your perfect color combination. For today I was using B18, B39, and B69. Thank you so much for joining me this week on Copic in the Craft Room, and I hope you have a very happy, colorful week. Please join us over at Facebook for all sorts of crafty Copic inspiration.